Welcome to the Explainer. Have you ever felt like you're just spinning your wheels when you study? You put in hours and hours only to have it all vanish a week later? Yeah, you're definitely not alone. Today, we're going to break down the science of how to actually learn effectively using strategies that are backed by evidence so you can learn pretty much anything way faster and deeper.
Okay, so let's just dive right in with a question that might hit a little close to home. Are those hours you're pouring into studying actually turning into real long-term knowledge? Or could you be learning twice as much in, say, half the time? The research suggests that for a whole lot of us, the answer is a big, resounding yes. And here's the wild part, this huge disconnect that science has totally uncovered. The study methods we all love, rereading notes, highlighting everything in sight, passively summarizing, they're also scientifically proven to be the least effective. So why do we do them? Well, it's because they feel productive. They're easy, they don't take much effort, and they give you this false sense of, oh yeah, I know this, when you really don't. And that brings us to the most crucial point of all. Real, effective learning, it's not supposed to feel easy. It's supposed to be hard. It should put a real strain on your brain. I want you to think of your brain like a muscle. You're not going to build biceps by lifting tiny little weights, right? Same exact principle here. The harder your brain has to work to do something, the stronger those neural connections get, and the more likely that information is to stick around. So, with that in mind, let's jump into our first section and see what a truly ideal learning environment actually looks like. We're going to take a look at a system that's been sharpening minds for centuries, way before modern science even had a name for what it was doing.
So, over at the University of Oxford, they teach students using something called the tutorial system. And let me tell you, it is intense. Students meet in these tiny groups. Sometimes it's just two students and one professor, a world expert in their field. They get assigned all this work, but the real magic, the real learning, happens right there in the tutorial, where they have to defend their ideas, justify every single claim, and just have their logic picked apart by their tutor.
So, what's the secret ingredient here? It's all about active engagement. The whole system forces students into this state where they have to be constantly on their toes. There's no hiding in the back of the room. You just can't be passive. It's not about teaching them what to think, it's about teaching them how to think. And what's amazing is that after a while, the students start to think like their tutors, challenging their own ideas before they even get to the room.
Okay, that's great for an Oxford student, but how can the rest of us get that benefit without our own personal tutor? Well, it turns out the core principle that makes the tutorial system so powerful is something anyone can use, and it's widely considered the single most effective study technique ever discovered.
It's all built on a principle called active recall. You might also hear it called retrieval practice. The big idea is that real learning isn't about trying to shove information into your brain. It's about the act of pulling information out of it. Every time you reach into your memory and retrieve a fact, you're strengthening the path to that information, making it easier to find next time. And look, the science on this is just a slam dunk. Back in 2013, a massive review looked at thousands of studies on every learning technique you can imagine. The winner? Practice testing, which is basically just active recall, came out on top, rated with high utility. And this wasn't just for one subject or one type of person. It's a universal rule for learning effectively. All right, so how do we actually do this? Well, one of the absolute best ways is something called the Feynman technique. It's named after Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who is a genius at explaining really complex ideas in super simple terms. And the process is just beautiful because it's so simple. You take a concept you're trying to learn, and then you try to explain it out loud in the simplest language you can think of, like you're teaching it to a kid. This process instantly shows you where the holes are in your own understanding. The second you get stuck, or you have to use some complicated jargon, that's your cue. You go back to the book, shore up your knowledge, and then try again until your explanation is perfectly smooth and simple. Okay, here's another fantastic tool, and this one is a direct replacement for that terrible habit of just rereading stuff over and over. It's called the read and recall method. So instead of reading a chapter and then just immediately reading it again, you do something totally different. After you read it the first time, you close the book. Seriously, shut it. Then, for maybe 5 minutes, just write down everything you can possibly remember. You are actively yanking that information out of your brain. Then, when your time's up, you open the book and check how you did, filling in the gaps. It feels like more work, for sure, but that extra effort is exactly what forges a stronger memory.
So, active recall is an absolute game changer for getting information locked into your head. But there's one more piece to the puzzle, right? How do you make sure all that stuff you worked so hard to learn doesn't just, evaporate a few days or weeks later? And that brings us to the science of timing and a concept that is the perfect partner to active recall. It's called spaced repetition.
See, our brains are basically forgetting machines. It's a scientific fact called the forgetting curve. It just shows that our memory for new information fades away exponentially over time. We forget things fastest right after we learn them. It's just how we're built. But here's the really clever part. We can hijack this curve. The secret is to review the information at the exact moment you're about to forget it. By testing yourself with active recall at increasingly longer intervals, like a day later, then 3 days, then a week, and so on, you basically flatten that forgetting curve. Each time, your brain has to work just a little bit harder to retrieve the memory, which sends a powerful signal that says, hey, this stuff is important. Keep it. So how on earth do you manage all that timing? Well, there's a powerful, super low-tech way you can build yourself. It's called a retrospective revision timetable. Honestly, you just make a simple spreadsheet, list all your topics down one column, and every time you review a topic using active recall, you just put the date in the next column and give it a color code based on how you feel, like green if it was super easy, yellow for meh, okay, and red for I really struggled. This gives you this beautiful, clear, visual dashboard of what you need to work on next. It's all about studying smarter, not just harder. And of course, if you want, technology can handle this whole process for you. There are apps, like Anki, that are literally designed as a perfect marriage of these two principles. They use a smart algorithm to show you digital flashcards at the exact right moment, just before you're about to forget them, which makes your study sessions unbelievably efficient. Okay, so let's put all these pieces together. Let's synthesize everything we've talked about into one powerful, unified system that you can literally start using today. I want you to think about it like this. The Oxford model, that's our ideal. It's the mindset of active, critical engagement. Then active recall gives you the tools, the how-to of studying, forcing you to pull information out. And finally, spaced repetition tells you when to study for the best long-term results. All three together, that's a complete evidence-based system for mastering anything. Look, this isn't just about getting a good grade on a test. It's about getting deep, real, lasting understanding. This system can empower you to learn any skill, any language, any subject you want. So the only question left is, what are you going to choose to learn first?